The impossible deadliner Damien Cross stood on the balcony of his downtown penthouse, watching storm clouds gather over the harbor. At 36, he had everything success could buy: a thriving investment firm, properties across 3 continents, and a reputation for turning failing companies into gold mines. But tonight, none of that mattered. His lawyer's voice still echoed in his mind. "Your grandmother's will is explicit, Damien. Marriage before your 37th birthday, or everything goes to Bradley. The deadline is 7 months away." Bradley, his cousin who had never worked a day in his life, who spent trust fund money on yachts and scandals. The thought of that man controlling the Cross family legacy made Damien's blood boil. But finding a wife in 7 months, when he barely had time for a social life, seemed equally impossible. His assistant had already fielded calls from dozens of women since the will became public knowledge. Gold diggers, social climbers, and fortune hunters, all suddenly interested in the eligible bachelor they had ignored before. The idea of marrying someone who only wanted his money felt like betraying everything his grandmother had taught him about integrity. A voice through the walls 3 floors below. Nina Rosales scrubbed bathroom tiles with practiced efficiency, her mind elsewhere. She had been cleaning the luxury residential building for 18 months, invisible to the wealthy residents who barely noticed her existence. That invisibility suited her fine. These people lived in a different universe, one where her problems did not exist. Her phone buzzed with another message from her lawyer. "Nina, we need to discuss the custody hearing. Victor's attorney is claiming provide adequate support for Tommy. They're questioning your ability to care for a child while working multiple jobs." Nina's throat tightened. Tommy, a 6-year-old nephew, had been living with her since her sister died 2 years ago. His father Victor had abandoned them both, but now suddenly wanted custody because his new wife thought a child would complete their picture-perfect family. The legal fees were crushing her, and Victor's family money gave him advantages she could never match. She leaned against the wall, fighting tears. Working 3 jobs to pay lawyers and provide for Tommy left her exhausted. Her dream of finishing the pre-med courses she had started years ago seemed impossible now. Everything seemed impossible. What Nina did not notice was Damien standing in the hallway outside his own apartment, having returned early from a meeting. He had been about to enter when he heard her phone conversation through the thin walls. Every word clear and desperate. An unconventional proposal. The next morning, Nina arrived at work with determination masking her exhaustion. She had spent the night researching every possible option, from legal aid programs to crowdfunding campaigns. Nothing provided fast enough solutions for the custody hearing scheduled in 6 weeks. Miss Rosales. The voice made her jump. Damien Cross stood in the doorway of his penthouse, dressed impeccably despite the early hour. "I need to speak with you privately. Please come in." Nina's heart raced. Had she done something wrong? Was he complaining about her work? She needed this job desperately. "Yes, Mr. Cross," she managed, following him into the massive apartment. His living room could have fit her entire apartment 3 times over. Abstract art hung on walls, and furniture that probably cost more than she made in a year filled the space. Nina stood awkwardly by the door, acutely aware of her cleaning uniform and worn shoes. "I understand you're facing a custody battle," Damien said without preamble. His directness caught her off guard. Heat flooded Nina's cheeks. "I apologize if you overheard my personal call. It won't interfere with my work, I promise. How much do you need?" 4 lawyers, court costs, everything to ensure you in custody of your nephew." Nina stared at him, confused. "Why are you asking me this?" Damien leaned against his desk, studying her with intense grey eyes. "Because I have a problem that requires a specific solution, and you might be exactly what I need." He explained his inheritance situation, watching her expression shift from confusion to disbelief. "You want to marry me?" Nina whispered when he finished. "For 7 months. A business arrangement, purely professional. You would receive $250,000 immediately for your legal expenses. Another $250,000 when our agreement concludes. In exchange, you play the role of my wife in public. We attend events together, maintain appearances for my family and business associates." The weight of impossible choices. Nina sank into the nearest chair, overwhelmed. This is insane. You don't even know me. I know you're hardworking, reliable, and devoted to your nephew. I know you're studying pre-med courses online, despite working multiple jobs. I know you're honest, because you could have stolen from any resident here, but never have. His words revealed he had paid more attention than she realized. What would this marriage actually involve? Nina asked carefully. You and Tommy would move into the guest suite here. Separate spaces, separate lives in private. Publicly, we're newlyweds. You'd attend social functions, family gatherings, business dinners. To the outside world, we're building a life together. And after 7 months, we divorce quietly. You walk away with enough money to finish medical school debt-free and provide Tommy with every advantage. I secure my inheritance, and the company my grandmother built stays in the family. Nina thought of Tommy's face when she read him bedtime stories. How he asked why they never had money for the zoo or new clothes. She thought of Victor's expensive lawyers, and how close she was to losing the only family she had left. I need time to think about this, she said finally. Damien nodded, his expression understanding. The custody hearing is in 6 weeks. I can have money transferred to your legal fund today, regardless of your decision about the marriage. Some things matter more than business contracts. Nina looked up sharply. Why would you do that? Because watching you work 3 jobs while studying for a better future reminds me of my grandmother. She built everything from nothing to. Damien's voice held genuine respect. And because Tommy deserves someone who fights for him the way you do. Moving into a new world. Nina stood in the guest suite of Damien's penthouse, still unable to believe this was real. The bedroom alone was larger than her entire previous apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered breathtaking views of the harbor, and the attached bathroom had a soaking tub that looked like something from a luxury spa. Tommy ran through the space with pure joy, his sneakers squeaking on the polished hardwood floors. Aunt Nina, look, I have my own room, and there's a huge TV, and the bed is so big. Damien appeared in the doorway, still wearing his work suit, despite the late hour. I had some things delivered for Tommy. I hope that's all right. He gestured toward the corner where a gaming console, art supplies, and stack of books waited. Nina's throat tightened. You didn't have to do that. Every kid should have a proper welcome to their new home, even if it's temporary. Damien's voice was gentle, but something flickered in his eyes when he said temporary, as if the word tasted wrong. The household staff had been informed of the marriage, and Nina immediately felt the shift in how they treated her. Maria, the housekeeper who had trained her, now called her Mrs. Cross and refused to let her help with cleaning. Robert, the building concierge, held doors open with formal respect instead of casual friendliness. This feels wrong, Nina told Damien that evening as Tommy fell asleep. They're treating me like I'm someone I'm not. You're my wife now, at least on paper. They're treating you appropriately. Damien poured 2 glasses of wine, handing her one. You'll get used to it. Will I? Nina accepted the glass, but didn't drink, because in 7 months, I go back to being the help. How do I unlearn being treated like this? Damien was quiet for a moment, swirling wine in his glass. Maybe you don't have to unlearn it. Maybe you deserve to be treated with respect regardless of your job title. Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. Nina looked away first, uncomfortable with the warmth spreading through her chest. The first public appearance of their first test came 3 days later at a charity auction for children's hospitals. Nina stared at herself in the mirror, barely recognizing the woman reflected back. Damien had sent a stylist who transformed her with a midnight blue gown that hugged her curves, professional makeup, and hair swept into an elegant updo. Diamond earrings borrowed from some exclusive jeweler completed the look. You look beautiful, Damien said when she emerged. For a moment, his professional mask slipped, revealing something genuine in his expression before he caught himself. The auction was overwhelming. Nina shook hands with tech moguls, real estate developers, and celebrities whose faces she recognized from magazines. Everyone wanted to meet Damien's mysterious new wife, The woman who had captured the heart of the city's most eligible bachelor, so romantic, gushed a woman dripping in jewels. A whirlwind courtship, I heard. How did you two meet? Nina glanced at Damien, panic rising. They hadn't prepared a story, but he smoothly took over, his hand finding the small of her back in a gesture that looked affectionate, but felt electric. Sometimes you just know when you've found the right person. His thumb traced small circles on her spine, visible to everyone watching. Nina had to remind herself it was just performance. Throughout the evening, Damien stayed close, introducing her to important people, making sure she felt included in conversations. When an older businessman made a condescending comment about her background, Damien's response was swift and cutting. My wife worked 3 jobs while studying pre-med. That takes more courage and intelligence than inheriting money ever will. His voice carried an edge that made the man pale and excuse himself. You didn't have to defend me, Nina said later. Yes, I did. You're my wife. Damien's intensity surprised her. Contract or not, no one disrespects you in my presence. Unexpected connections. Weeks passed. Their separate lives began intertwining in unexpected ways. Nina discovered that Damien worked brutal hours, often forgetting to eat. She started leaving dinner plates outside his home office, simple meals that reminded him to take care of himself. One evening, she found him asleep at his desk, surrounded by financial reports and cold coffee. Without thinking, she draped a blanket over his shoulders. He stirred slightly, murmuring thank you, without opening his eyes, and Nina felt something shift in her chest. Damien, meanwhile, found himself listening for Nina's voice every evening. She sang Spanish lullabies to Tommy, her voice carrying through the penthouse like a gentle melody. He started staying in his office later, not to work, but to hear those songs that made the sterile apartment feel like home. He also noticed how Nina treated everyone with kindness. She helped Maria practice English, tutored Robert's daughter in math, and remembered everyone's birthdays. The staff adored her, and Damien understood why. She had a gift for making people feel seen. Your wife is special, Maria told him one morning while preparing breakfast. She has a good heart. You're a lucky man, Mr. Cross. Damien watched Nina help Tommy with homework at the kitchen island, laughing at something the boy said. Lucky didn't begin to cover it, and that realization terrified him. The family dinner test of everything changed when Damien's parents arrived unexpectedly from their home in Connecticut. Richard and Catherine Cross were old money aristocrats who valued pedigree over everything else. Damien knew they would never approve of his marriage to a former maid. The dinner was tense from the start. Catherine's smile was polished and cold as she evaluated Nina from head to toe. Richard barely acknowledged her presence, focusing instead on discussing business with his son. So, Nina, Catherine said over the soup course, her tone sharp as crystal. Damien tells us you were working as a maid before your marriage. How fortunate for you. The table fell silent. Tommy, eating in the kitchen with Maria, remained blissfully unaware of the tension. Nina felt every eye on her, waiting to see if she would crumble. Yes, Mrs. Cross, I cleaned homes to support my nephew and pay for my education. Nina kept her voice steady, despite her racing heart. I'm not ashamed of honest work. Of course not, dear. Catherine's smile didn't reach her eyes, though I imagine this lifestyle is quite an adjustment. Designer clothes, charity galas, penthouses, must feel like a fairy tale. Damien's jaw clenched, but Nina placed a gentle hand on his arm, signaling she could handle this. It's definitely different, Nina replied evenly. But what matters most hasn't changed. Tani still needs help with homework. People still need kindness and respect. Money changes circumstances, not character. Richard set down his wineglass. And do you love our son? Or do you love what he can provide? The question hung in the air like an accusation. Nina looked at Damien, really looked at him, and realized with startling clarity that the answer wasn't as simple as their contract made it seem. Your son stayed up all night researching the best specialists for Tommy's asthma. He reads bedtime stories with funny voices that make a 6-year-old laugh. He works harder than anyone I know and treats every person with dignity, from CEOs to doormen. Nina's voice grew stronger with each word. So yes, I love him. Not for his money, but for who he is when no one's watching. The words came from somewhere deeper than their agreement. Damien stared at her, something raw and vulnerable crossing his face. Nina realized with a jolt that she meant every word she had just said. After his parents left, Damien found Nina on the terrace, staring at the city lights below. Thank you for what you said tonight, he said quietly, joining her at the railing. I meant it. Even the part about loving you. The air between them crackled with tension. Damien turned to face her fully. Nina, this arrangement, it's becoming complicated. I know. She met his eyes, seeing her own confusion reflected back. We're supposed to be pretending. Are we still pretending? His voice was barely above a whisper. Before Nina could answer, Tommy's voice called from inside. Aunt Nina, can Damien help me build my Lego set? The moment shattered, but something had shifted between them. As they went inside to help Tommy, their hands brushed, and neither pulled away. Blurred lines following weeks brought more changes. Damien started coming home earlier, joining Nina and Tommy for dinner. He taught the boy chess and helped with school projects, his face lighting up at Tommy's excitement. Nina caught herself watching him with Tommy, her heart swelling at his gentleness. One Saturday, Damien suggested they visit the aquarium as a family. The word family slipped out naturally, and no one corrected him. They spent the day like any normal family, Tommy running between exhibits, while Nina and Damien walked hand in hand, the gesture feeling less like performance and more like choice. Look, Tommy pressed his face against the shark tank. That one's huge. Damien lifted the boy onto his shoulders for a better view. See the teeth? Those are designed for hunting. Nina snapped a photo on her phone, capturing Damien's smile, genuine and unguarded. This man who commanded boardrooms and controlled millions was utterly himself in this moment. And it was beautiful. That night, after Tommy fell asleep between them during a movie, Damien carefully carried him to bed. Nina followed, watching as he tucked the blankets around the boy with surprising tenderness. He's lucky to have you, Damien said softly as they left Tommy's room. He's lucky to have both of us, Nina replied before she could stop herself. They stood in the hallway, close enough to touch, the air heavy with unspoken feelings. Damien reached up, tucking a strand of hair behind Nina's ear. Nina, I need to tell you something, her heart pounded. What is it? This contract, this arrangement, it was supposed to be simple, but you've made everything complicated in the best possible way. His thumb traced her jawline. I find myself forgetting this is temporary. Maybe it doesn't have to be, Nina whispered. Before either could say more, Nina's phone rang. The lawyer's name flashed on screen. The custody hearing had been moved up. It was happening in 3 days. The moment shattered as reality crashed back in. Their contract still had 4 months remaining. The custody battle still loomed, and neither knew if what they felt was real or just the result of playing house too convincingly. The custody hearing courtroom felt suffocating despite its high ceilings. Nina sat beside her lawyer, acutely aware of Damien in the gallery behind her. He had insisted on coming, though she had tried to spare him the ordeal. Victor sat across the aisle with his new wife Ashley, both dressed expensively, projecting the image of stable prosperity. His lawyer painted Nina as unstable, working multiple jobs in the past, unable to provide consistent care, living in cramped apartments. But now she's married to a wealthy man, Victor's lawyer said with thinly veiled disgust. How convenient. One has to wonder about the sudden transformation. Nina's lawyer stood. Mrs. Cross has always provided excellent care for Tommy. Her marriage doesn't change her devotion to that child. The judge asked to hear from Tommy himself. The boy, now comfortable in his new life, spoke honestly about feeling safe with Aunt Nina, about Damien helping with homework, about finally having a real home. And your father? The judge asked gently. Do you want to live with him? Tommy's small voice was clear. He left us when Mom got sick. Aunt Nina stayed. She always stays. Victor's face reddened, but he said nothing. The judge took a brief recess to review documents, and Nina felt like she might shatter from tension. Damien appeared at her side during the break. "You're doing great. Tommy's testimony was powerful. What if it's not enough? What if they think our marriage is just for show? Then we prove it's not." Damien took her hand, his grip warm and steady. "We prove that what we have is real. But is it real?" Nina whispered, voicing the fear that had haunted her for weeks. "Or are we just playing our parts too well?" Before Damien could answer, the judge returned. "After careful consideration, I'm granting primary custody to Nina Rosales Cross. Victor will have supervised visitation rights." Nina collapsed into her chair, tears streaming down her face. She had won. Tommy was safe. Damien pulled her into his arms right there in the courtroom, and she clung to him like a lifeline. The discovery were weeks after the custody hearing. Nina was organizing Damien's home office when she found a folder with her name on it. Curiosity overcame discretion, and she opened it. Inside were photographs of her from months before they married, dated back over a year. Background check reports, surveillance notes documenting her schedule, her jobs, Tommy's medical appointments. Her hands trembled as she read through page. Damien had been watching her long before he ever offered the marriage contract. He knew about Tommy's custody situation, her financial struggles, even her abandoned dream of medical school. Everything she thought was coincidence had been carefully orchestrated. The office door opened. "Nina, I can explain." She turned around, holding the folder like evidence of betrayal. "Explain what?" "That you've been stalking me for over a year. That this entire marriage was researched and planned like a business acquisition." Damien ran his hands through his hair, his composure cracking. "It's not what it looks like. Really. Because it looks like you investigated every aspect of my life, engineered a situation where I'd be desperate enough to accept your proposal, and manipulated everything to get what you wanted. I first saw you 14 months ago." Damien's voice was raw with emotion. "You were at the park with Tommy. He had just gotten out of the hospital, and you were pushing him on the swings, singing to him even though I could see how exhausted you were. You were so beautiful, so strong, and I couldn't stop thinking about you." Nina stared at him. "So you had me investigated. I wanted to know more about you. Then I found out you were applying for jobs, and when I saw your name come across my building management company, I couldn't believe it. Having you nearby felt like fate. So the inheritance deadline, the marriage contract, was any of that real?" "The inheritance is completely real. My grandmother's will is genuine." Damien moved closer, desperation in his eyes. "But Nina, I would have helped Tommy regardless. I was already planning to anonymously pay for your legal fees before the inheritance issue even came up. Why?" Her voice broke. "Why go through this elaborate charade?" "Because I'm a coward." He laughed bitterly. "I can negotiate $1 million deals without blinking, but I had no idea how to talk to a woman who was falling in love with. So I created a situation where you'd have to be near me, where I'd have a chance to know you. You manipulated everything. I did, and I'll regret that for the rest of my life." Damien's voice cracked. "But Nina, everything that's happened between us, the feelings, the connection, that's all real. The way my heart stops when you smile, the way Tommy's laugh makes me believe in family again, the way you've turned this cold apartment into a home, none of that was planned." Nina sank into a chair, overwhelmed. "How can I trust anything between us when it started with lies? Because I'm standing here telling you the truth now, knowing it might destroy everything." Damien knelt in front of her. "Because I love you, Nina, not the idea of you, not the convenience of you, but you. Your strength, your kindness, your terrible singing voice in the morning, the way you organize my desk when you think I'm not looking, despite everything." Nina felt tears streaming down her face. "I need time to think." Walking away, Nina spent the next 2 days at her mother's house across town, leaving Tommy with Damien. She needed space to process everything, to separate what was real from what was manufactured. Her mother, Rosa, listened to the whole story over coffee. "So this man, he investigated you, manipulated circumstances, but also genuinely fell in love with you." That's what he claims. And you? Rosa studied her daughter's face. How do you feel about him? That's the problem, Mama. I don't know if what I feel is real or just a reaction to the role I've been playing. Rosa set down her cup. Let me ask you this. When you're with him, do you feel seen? Not as a maid or a role or a contract, but as yourself. Nina thought about the quiet morning coffees, the way Damien listened when she talked about her dreams, how he remembered that she liked her toast slightly burnt. Yes, she admitted. I feel seen. Then maybe the how of how you got together matters less than the what of what you have now. But the trust is broken. Trust can be rebuilt, Mia. The question is whether he's worth the effort. Meanwhile, Damien was falling apart. Tommy asked constantly when Aunt Nina was coming home, and Damien had no answer. He threw himself into work, but everything reminded him of her. The coffee she had made that morning, the book she left on the side table, the lullabies he no longer heard in the evenings. Robert, the concierge, found him in the parking garage at 2 a.m., sitting in one of his restored vintage cars. Mr. Cross, are you all right? I destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me, Damien said quietly. I was so afraid she wouldn't choose me that I tried to control everything, and now I've lost her anyway. Have you told her that? I've told her I love her. I've apologized. I don't know what else to say. Robert smiled gently. Maybe sometimes it's not about what you say. It's about what you're willing to risk. The choice. Nina returned on a rainy Tuesday evening. Tommy ran to her immediately, wrapping his small arms around her waist. You came back. Of course I did, baby. Nina kissed his head, her eyes finding Damien standing in the doorway. I'll always come back for you. After putting Tommy to bed, Nina found Damien in his workshop, the place he went when he needed to think. He was working on an engine, his hands covered in grease, looking more vulnerable than she had ever seen him. We need to talk, she said. Damien set down his tools, wiping his hands. I know, and I know you're probably here to end this. I've prepared the final payment. You'll have everything the contract promised, plus extra for what I put you through. That's not why I'm here. He looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. What you did was wrong, Nina continued. The investigation, the manipulation, all of it. You took away my choice in how we started. I know. I'm sorry, but, she stepped closer, I've spent days thinking about what we have now, not how we got here. And the truth is, Damien, I love you. The real you who works with his hands and reads to Tommy, and stays up late worrying about your employees. I love the man you are when you're not trying to control everything. Damien stood frozen, afraid to believe what he was hearing. So here's what I propose, Nina said, pulling out their marriage contract. We tear this up. No more agreements, no more timelines, no more conditions. We start over, completely fresh. You can court me properly, we can date, and we can figure out if this is real without any contracts dictating the terms. And if it doesn't work, Damien's voice was hoarse, then at least we'll know we tried honestly. She held out the contract. What do you say? Ready to take a real chance on us? Damien took the papers and, without hesitation, tore them in half. I've never been more ready for anything in my life. He pulled her into his arms, kissing her with all the pent-up emotion of the past months. This kiss wasn't for show or for contracts. This kiss was a promise of something real. 1 year later, small ceremony in the botanical gardens was everything their courthouse wedding wasn't, filled with love, laughter, and genuine joy. Tommy served as ring bearer, walking down the aisle with serious concentration. Nina's mother cried happy tears in the front row. Even Damien's parents attended, having slowly come to respect Nina's strength and grace. This time, when the officiant said you may kiss the bride, Damien's kiss was tender, real, and filled with the promise of forever. Their vows were simple but heartfelt. Nina promised to love him through success and failure, to challenge him when he tried to control everything, to build a life based on honesty and trust. Damien promised to never manipulate or deceive her again, to trust in their love even when fear told him otherwise, to choose her every single day for the rest of his life. I love you, Mrs. Cross, he whispered against her lips. I love you too, Mr. Cross, and this time, I chose you completely freely. As they walked back down the aisle, as husband and wife, truly married this time, Tommy ran alongside them throwing flower petals with abandon. The guests laughed and cheered, celebrating not just a wedding, but a love story that had survived impossible odds. 6 months later, Nina started medical school with Damien's full support. He rearranged his schedule to help with Tommy's school runs and made sure she had quiet time to study. Their life wasn't perfect, but it was real and built on a foundation of choice, not contracts. Sometimes, late at night, Nina would find Damien in his workshop, and they would talk about everything and nothing, building their relationship one honest conversation at a time. Any regrets? She asked one evening, watching him work on an old motorcycle. Only that I didn't have the courage to simply ask you out for coffee 14 months ago. He pulled her close. But I can't regret the journey that brought us here, even though it started wrong. Especially because it started wrong. It taught us both what really matters, not how a story begins, but how we choose to write it together. Nina kissed him, tasting motor oil and promises. Their love story had started with a contract designed to fake a marriage. It had evolved into something neither of them expected, a genuine partnership built on trust earned, mistakes forgiven, and the courage to choose love even when it wasn't easy. Tommy burst into the workshop. Can we have pizza for dinner? Damien laughed, scooping up the boy. Absolutely. Family vote. As the three of them headed inside, arguing playfully about pizza toppings, Nina realized that sometimes the most beautiful love stories came from the most unexpected beginnings. Their contract had ended, but their real story was just beginning, written not in legal terms, but in daily choices to love, trust, and build a life together. And that was worth more than any contract could ever define.